gremlins! After last week's video, which took 11 hours and 2 weeks to draw and finish, you should really go watch it, I needed something easy to draw this week. Usually, my go-to easy drawing is to create a fantasy character with randomly generated characteristics, but I already did a video like that very recently and wanted to try something different. Instead, I used a random word generator and Pinterest to find a random photograph, which I used to inspire this character drawing. I generated several words until I found one that seemed promising, the word sun. I searched sun aesthetic on Pinterest and found this gorgeous image that looks like it was taken from a plane, a bright sun over a bed of fluffy clouds. The colors in this image are warm and sunset-like, and I think I can make a really cool-looking character with the colors and elements from this image. Unfortunately, while sketching my character, my computer froze and stopped recording my process, which led to me losing the video of the first half hour of my drawing. This means that the speed draw starts with an almost complete sketch already, and I only managed to record the line art and coloring. I decided to turn this vibrant image of an aerial sunset into a fantastical priestess character. Her eyes are bound with white cloth, partly because I like the idea that a person with intense light magic would need to protect her eyes from the light, and partly because often a person with bound eyes is symbolism for having a magic power relating to sight, such as seeing the future or reading people's minds. I think this priestess would be able to see visions when her eyes are unbound, so she binds them to keep from being overwhelmed with visions. It also helps keep her from damaging her retinas working so closely with light. I created a custom brush for this drawing, a brush I should have made ages ago since I draw chains in so many of my drawings. Now I have a brush that draws the chains for me using my same style of line art. It's going to make jewelry making so much easier, and I can add more chains to designs without it taking way longer now. I definitely used a lot of chains in this drawing. The priestess's flowing dress is strapless and connected to a golden choker around her neck with several thin gold chains. She also has loops of those same chains on her upper arms. The dress itself is very simple, a loose skirt hanging down to her ankles with a slit up one leg. The dress is cinched around her waist with a corset belt to break up the shape a bit, and under the dress she's wearing thigh-high boots for the pure aesthetic. I tried another new thing for the line art in this image. I'm still using varied line weights for my outlines, but it doesn't vary much because I don't like using very thick lines. However, I wanted to try giving the very outer outline of this character, basically her silhouette, a thick black outline to make it stand out against the background. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this new line art style. I also, when doing the line art, forgot to outline the trailing ties of the priestess's blindfold, and had to go back and add them a little later in the process. Once again, this character is wearing a lot of gold. It seems I cannot stop myself from drawing shiny metal. She has a crown that looks like sunrise in her hair, and wide gold wrist cuffs, as well as the golden chains. These are a more yellowy orange shade of gold than I usually give my drawings, but it matches the color of the sunlight and sky more than the brassy gold I prefer. I gave this priestess an afro hairstyle to mirror the shape of the clouds in my photo reference. I'm not great at drawing curly hair, so I hope I did an okay job in my style, just highlighting some of the texture without rendering it all. The afro is the same color as the clouds in the image. All the colors in my drawing are directly color picked from my photo reference, although sometimes they are tweaked to make them a bit lighter or darker. The corset belt and the boots are an intense shade of sunset red sampled from the sunlight highlights of the clouds and the lower portion of the sky. At first that shade was more orange, but I changed the color to a darker red after I finished blocking in the color and didn't like it. I also originally colored the blindfold the same shade of red, but decided to change it to white instead. The priestess's dress matches the gradient of the sky in my photo reference. At the bust, it's a grey that looks almost bluish next to all the warm oranges and yellows. That grey gets more saturated as it turns into a pale orange, then a more intense shade of orange, then almost red at the hem of the skirt. I blocked the color in stripes, then blurred it all together into a smooth gradient. I color sampled some of the darker shades in my photo reference for this priestess's skin tone, a dark, rich brown from the shadows of the clouds. I think her skin looks absolutely gorgeous under the bright red and gold of her clothing and jewelry. Another element of fantasy in this character's design, I gave her huge red feathered wings. It felt on theme, a sun priestess holding a ball of light in her hands, why shouldn't she also have wings? It also fits the vibe of the photograph, since the photograph appears to be taken from the air above the clouds. I wanted this character to be flying. The red wings also make her look like a phoenix a bit, which fits with the association of sun and fire. Speaking of that ball of light, that was the next thing I drew. From the beginning, I wanted this character to be summoning a sphere of magic that looks like the sun in my reference photograph, and for that to be the focal point of the image. The center of the sun is white hot, ringed in yellow like the actual sun in the photograph. Her fingers are backlit where they are visible in front of that orb. I also created rays of light that mirror the rays in the photograph, emanating from the center of the light through the rest of the image. Those rays frame the priestess's face, getting fainter the further from the source they spread. The light in this image is very different to anything I've had to shade in a while. I don't know if I've ever drawn underlighting on a face before, but it's definitely been a long time, and I probably didn't do it correctly before. I looked up several reference images of lighting on faces on my phone to reference while blocking in where the golden light would fall. This lighting is very dramatic, with high contrast between light and shadows, especially on the face. The light is golden and the shadows nearly black. I gave the hair the same red highlights that appear in the clouds in my reference image. At first I was planning on those highlights being from the light, but since my main source of light is below the hair, it wouldn't look the way it does on the clouds. Instead, I decided that the hair is two-toned, with red highlights added through hair dye, or possibly just as part of the same fantasy that gave this woman wings and magic. Because of the high contrast between highlights and shadows from this magical light source, I made both a shadow layer and a cast light layer for shading. I worked on the shadows first, shading with a very dark shade of reddish brown. I added cast shadows across this woman's hair from the spikes of her golden crown. I also defined the folds of her dress where her leg is emerging from the slit in her skirt. I highlighted the top of her leg both under the skirt and where her skin is visible, as well as her torso and arms. The background of the image is taken directly from the photograph, the same gradient in the sky and the same colors of clouds. The priestess is floating on a sunlit cloud in an orange sky. I love backgrounds that are mostly sky. They are so easy to make look good with some cloud brushes, and it's so quick. I really like how this image turned out. I think the lighting turned out really good, and the color scheme of this image is really cool. Well, technically, it's really warm. I really like where my mind went on this photograph. The priestess looks really cool, absolutely gorgeous and powerful. I think my favorite parts of the drawing are the light and the shading on the skirt, and my favorite part to draw was the gold jewelry and the light on the skin. This art will be on my Etsy if you also liked how it turned out and want to support me. Also, please consider liking and subscribing if you like my content. Until next time, bye!